Hi, folks. Today we're talking to Jessica Feng of AWS, whose charter is to bring Q everywhere, Amazon Q in this case. And with that said, Jessica, thanks for spending time with us today. My first question is, when did you join AWS? And then how has the journey been and how you have evolved into this current role? If you can shed some light on it sort of as an introduction
Sure.
to your role.
Well, thank you so much for having me. So as you mentioned, I just crossed my 7-year anniversary, which is crazy. It's been an amazing ride. And at the end of the day, I'm really passionate about education. Like, how do we learn how to learn? How do we use technology as the way to disrupt how we interact as individuals, as organizations? And so I started my journey at AWS in serverless, which was the new way that customers and our developers were building their microservices, production-worthy applications. I've been really lucky to work now for the last 18 months on Amazon Q, which is very much this new way in which I think we're going to be able to interact with AWS, how builders, operators, and many other kind of personas across the SDLC to really engage with AWS and to build something that can truly be transformative.
Yeah, that's very interesting sort of charter, especially with the rise of GenAI and then the Cube being just the GenAI sort of front runner on many ways, and using your sort of prime model from Amazon. How do you guys identify the use cases, and what is the sort of process you guys follow to guide the market, number one? Number two is, what's the process you recommend to the customer base to follow once they pick Q?
Right. So as you can probably remember, the world changed at the end of 2022 when GenAI really came out with, we'll call it a consumer-facing application. But we know AI, ML, it's not a new technology, right? It goes back many years, and we've really been able, I think GenAI is the opportunity to really democratize what data scientists have been doing for many years. And if you look, just take a step back and look at the broader AWS portfolio, right? You've probably seen the hamburger slide. We have infrastructure at the bottom. We have our Trainium, our inferential chips. We have Bedrock, which is the easiest way to access first and third-party models. But I think if we take out the theory and really look at the practicality of what does it mean to bring GenAI into our organizations and into our customers, that really sits at the top. It's the application layer where Amazon Q sits. And I think what's interesting is Q, as you know, comes in different flavors, right? We have knowledge workers. How do we actually bring the information across your entire organization to the fingertips of every worker and every employee? All the way to how do we bring kind of this transformative experience for the developers who are actually writing code and building for their organizations. And so if we focus on kind of this new way of building and operating and interacting with the cloud, I think the use cases right now are pretty straightforward, right? We started in the IDE around, we'll call developer productivity. How do we make someone writing code with kind of inline coding suggestions, with the chat applications, how do we make them more productive? But I'm sure you've seen the stats. You know, most developers only spend 20-ish% of their time actually writing code. There's a whole rest of the SDLC in terms of what that is. And so one key part, and it was very true for the Amazon development team, is just around technical debt. How do we look at how quickly you've built, how much code you've written in the last X number of years, and what does it mean when you have to go upgrade and think about things that might be end of life or really looking to take advantage of all those pieces. And so that's the second really big use case that we see, is around how do we retire tech debt at scale? And Q Developer has the code transformation capabilities, but we're seeing a lot more of that proliferation across the entire piece. And so what does it mean for the DevOps teams? What does it mean for the platform teams, for the data scientists, all of those that are trying to take advantage of Q Developer in the context of their current workflows?
That's great. So mainly you have covered the sort of spectrum of use cases, you know, from the PRD to planning to, you know, then coding and also refactoring. And the last thing developers want to do is read somebody else's code and fix it. Most of the developers, want to write the fresh code themselves, right? Even they don't want to look at their own code from the past. It's hard to do, right?
Right.
And Q helps a lot, I mean, very effectively in that scenario. And the tools like Q, I will say, right, even from other vendors. So that's great. In that context, from the usage side, what you see, which personas are nibbling more on Q more than others, and or like where you see more success and where you see some more work needs to be done on the education side?
I think we really started with the developer, right? As we mentioned, how do you remove the toil as part of the application development process? And you're seeing our software development agent, so you can actually build full functions and work alongside essentially a companion. It's almost like pure programming, but directly within your IDE. And so that's typically where a lot of our customers have started. But I am lucky enough, I get to spend a lot of my time talking to the CTOs and the CIOs of these organizations that are trying to think about, well, where else can I bring this new technology, this way of transforming the way that we work as humans into the rest of their organization? And so one extension of that I'm actually really excited about is Q Apps, which is part of the Q Business portfolio. And so that's a really easy way to use natural language without knowing any code to actually build an application within the guardrails and constraints and data of your organization's of your organization. And so for me, I'm a failed developer. I tried to do development in college. It's like learning a new language, right? The pronunciations, the enunciations. It was really hard for me to grok, and every day I cried in the computer lab because my program didn't compile. With GenAI, we are democratizing the ability to really do that. And so I think Q Apps and its, we'll call it fraternal twin, Party Rock, which is really this educational toy that we built internally to allow our developers just to know what it means to interact with LLMs. And so for me, that was kind of this very eye-opening experience where the story I like to tell is I have this amazing but very chatty manager. She loves to talk to me during meetings. And so what I did is I popped over to Party Rock and in the course of 5 minutes, wrote her an application called Meeting Mute. It told jokes, it gave her pictures, it provided memes, and so that I could go back to concentrating on the meeting when she had something great to do. That's obviously a silly example, but you can imagine how customers like Volkswagen could use an application like Q Apps. They brought in hundreds and thousands of job descriptions in order to match to their organizations. I think that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we can do. And then if you spread that out to, Q for your business, there's Q in QuickSight, and we have, I think, a lot of other kind of experiences that we're experimenting with in terms of expanding that to net new personas and teams and use cases.
Yeah, definitely. I see Q sort of going into the ops area as well, including security, including analytics and sort of modern analytics, you can call it, right? So that's great. There's always got a debate, just picking up on that last answer from you. No code to low code to pro code, right? So like it covers, we need to cover all the spectrum, as a vendor, every vendor tries to cover all the full spectrum. How do you see that debate? You talk to a lot of developers at customer sites and whatnot, and even internal, right? Do you think on the pro code side, the Q is more effective, or on the low code or no code, or it regardless, it's effective, the tools like Q?
You're going to hate this answer, but it really depends, right? It depends on who you're speaking to. I think the opportunity for tools like Q Apps, tools like Q and QuickSight, and what we'll call like the business or the knowledge workers is their ability to move more quickly because they don't have to go to central IT and get someone technical to go build that for you. I came from a startup where I'm pretty sure the developers didn't want to talk to the go-to-market person. But the great example that we have within AWS is our product marketing team leveraged Q Business to actually help them write, like, what is the bill of materials for this net launch? How do we make sure that the messaging and the content and the first call decks that we're creating are within the guidelines of AWS brand and how we actually want to articulate the thing itself. And so I think it's less about, is there a debate between pro code or no code? I think it really is this, again, this democratization of knowledge, right? We have data out there. Data translates into wisdom because we can read books and go to the library. Wisdom then gets to analysis. How can we use what we've learned in the past to actually try to predict what's in the future? And then there's synthesis, right? How do we actually then take all this information and create theory or create an abstraction? We're not quite there yet. I think we're getting there, and I think the ability to do that with GenAI and using natural language, I think that's what's so interesting and so powerful about where we are today.
Jessica, one aspect which comes up often is the job security. As the GenAI is coming into the picture, it's making developers more productive, the ops people more productive, and there's a fear of losing jobs, or like, do we need less people? Do you encounter that in the field, or how do you guys coach the CXOs to sort of work around that concern?
Absolutely. That's actually one of the main questions that we get a lot when we have these executive conversations around, well, what does it mean for my workforce or my organization when we bring in something like a Q or generative AI, where you're really increasing productivity? The response here, I think we both know, right? It's really about augmentation or enhancement of your workers today. It's how do you remove the toil and the things that they really don't want to be working on, and instead give them time back to focus on the things that are really exciting, right? Computer science and writing code is about building something. It's about getting your hands dirty to go create. And so we really try to help our customers understand, well, bringing this in is really easy. So selling the CXO on the vision and the opportunity is great. It's funny, the next persona we're really going to have to sell to is the individual user. How do we get them to really understand? I'm pretty sure you or I don't want someone to come tell us, oh, try to be more productive. We want to do something that we love. We want to stay in the flow. We want to get information at our fingertips so that we can feel productive. We can do the things that we love doing.
And actually, it's tapping into the sort of greater knowledge base of the whole world, if you will, like collective wisdom, if you will. And that's what these models are bringing to us. I also see the sort of Gen AI is like, it will, I think, enhance people's roles, and it will add more to the jobs. And I usually see the difference between programming and coding. And right now, Gen AI is very helpful in coding, but programming needs, like, how to hook up this system with that system, the interfaces, the requirements, and it has a whole enchilada around that. So the programmers are still needed in conjunction with the like coding part, if you will,
Right.
coming from the Gen AI.
Right.
So is that how you see that?
Right. So we started right in the IDE with around developer productivity. How do we make the individual? But I think what we're really realizing is it's not about developer productivity, it's about development productivity. And so how do we look outside just people who are coding, people who are testing, who are debugging, who are trying to troubleshoot some sort of issue that has happened within their application? And so we can assign some small tasks to, we'll call it, to the agent today. I think as the underlying models improve, as our systems improve, as our ability to articulate these more complex ideas gets easier and better and more clear, we'll be able to assign more complex concepts and ideas to these agents. And I think that ability to do that is still a little bit far away, but I think that's what we're moving towards. And so hopefully in the near future, it will be about the entire SDLC. How do we move everything from the ideation of gathering feedback all the way to what does it mean now to actually put this into production and release it out to your end customers?
Moving towards the wrapping up our discussion, how do you see the different persona of companies, not the persona of people within a company, but companies, right? ISVs, VARs, or your partners. How you guys are seeing, or because you focus on the go-to-market strategy, right? How do you push it to different sort of personas of companies, the message of Q, and are ISVs sort of hopping onto this more than the internal developers at a typical company, for example, or vice versa?
I think the future of where Q is going to be, it's going to be your AWS expert. Right now, it can do simple tasks, that take maybe 5 or 10 minutes. But I think in the future, you're going to see probably close to 100% of AWS services leveraging GenAI, whether you can actually see it on the covers or whether it's underneath the hood and powering that. And so if we make Q really very much your AWS expert with our best practices, with the years of knowledge that we have internally from developing on our services, I think we're really going to expand the opportunity beyond what it is today. And that means everything from, we know that most customers don't just use AWS. There are a lot of other tools, services, experiences that they have outside. And so I think you'll start seeing things that I'm really excited about. You'll start seeing that experience proliferate across everywhere. And so it's less, in my opinion, it's less about the ISVs versus the VARs. It's how do we take advantage of this democratization and this ability to really enable all of our developers, our knowledge workers, our employees, our people, our humans to be able to build and operate and really have that creative sense within their organizations.
That's great. And now we're coming sort of like about a month away from reInvent, right? If you can shed some light on, without giving too much information, which you maybe like not supposed to be shared right now, where is the queue going? What's coming down the pike? What do you see this going?
Right. I really think it is Q's going to be your AWS expert. We have years of best practices and architecture understandings and what does it really mean to build and operate on AWS. I think you'll see, I'm really excited how we expand beyond, in the IDE, the developer experience to what does it mean to operate in this new world of generative AI? What does it mean to have your security best practices, the guardrails and the compliance that's required and mandated by your organizations, as well as looking at something that might be, best practices within the industry? I think looking at, you kind of touched on the data piece of it. How do we make sure that we give our customers the best experience when they're looking at either rebuilding or modernizing their various applications. And so a lot of that exciting news as we are sprinting 55 days to reInvent, as we're sprinting there to get that so that our customers can get that same experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the well-architected framework, all the sort of best practices must be distilled as sort of sad knowledge in this model, if you will, which will help a lot of builders build better and maintain better and have better economics of systems, I believe.
Absolutely.
With that said, Jessica, thanks for your time and appreciate your insights, and look forward to have another discussion some other time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.